So guys, Rufai has slammed the Tinubu's government as Tinubu abandoned governance and jetted outside the country. This is coming amidst hunger, insecurity, and a whole lot. Now take a look at this headline. It says, terrorists launched fresh deadly attacks on Kwara communities as security agents withdraw cite lack of weapon. So our security men are almost surrendering to these bad guys, and Tinubu is not even in the country. They said they can't fight anymore. They don't have weapons. Nigerians, where are we heading to upon all that has been borrowed? I mean, they borrowed a lot. They used how many billions to go renovate international conference centers, and they named it after Tinubu's name. But Nigeria cannot afford to buy weapons for their security agents. No doubt Boko Haram is using them to fry rice and stew. So guys, I'm just going to allow you to take a look at how Peter Obi has slammed the Tinubu's government for abandoning governance and going to St. Lucia. This trip does not even bring any economic benefits to Nigerians. Just take a look for yourself.
Over the weekend, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu traveled to St. Lucia for a state visit and to kick off a two-nation diplomatic tour of the Caribbean and South America. Tinubu was welcomed with full military honors by St. Lucia's Governor General Cyril Charles and the country's Prime Minister, Philippe Pierre. Let's take a look.
Royal salute! Present! Up! Royal salute! Freeze it! Up!
4 military salutes with our national anthem. I mean, the president was well received, but you know, there have been comments online. I'll take a comment from Labour Party leader who has strongly criticized the president's trip to St. Lucia, calling it ill-timed and insensitive, given Nigeria's severe socio-economic challenges. Peter Obi's tweet reads in part. He wrote, in the past 2 years, Nigeria has lost more people to all sorts of criminality than a country that is officially at war. Nigerians are hungrier, and most people do not know where their next meal will come from. With such a gory picture of one's country, you can imagine my bewilderment when I saw a news release from the presidency announcing that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is departing Nigeria today for a visit to St. Lucia in the Caribbean. This is the president going for leisure when he couldn't visit Niger State, where over 200 lives were lost and over 700 persons still living in a flood natural disaster. I wonder which type of incident will happen before a president is attracted to show fiscal sympathy to the distressed citizens. He went on to commend the president for visiting Benue. He further wrote, I don't think the situation in this country today calls for leisure for anybody in a position of authority, more so the president, on whose desk the buck stops. This regime has repeatedly shown its insensitivity and lack of passion for the populace, going by the way it prioritizes the rich and shows indifference to the poor. In the meantime, the presidency has defended Tinubu's trip as a strategic diplomatic engagement aimed at deepening Nigeria's ties with Caribbean nations and fostering South-South cooperation, rather than a leisure excursion. In a statement released by Bayo Onanuga, special advisor to the president on information and strategy, the visit aims to rekindle ancestral bonds and open new diplomatic, cultural, and economic avenues, given the significant population of Nigerian descent and shared historical ties. He also described the visit as a rare historic diplomatic event, with Nigeria being one of fewer than 10 state visits that St. Lucia has hosted since its independence, and the first by an African head of state since Nelson Mandela in 1998. Well, Peter Obi continues to maintain that this trip is inappropriate, and he still maintains that, you know, it's a leisure trip, given what the country is facing at this moment. Dr. Bati, your thoughts?
Well, I disagree with Mr. Peter Obi. I don't think it's a leisure trip. I've always argued on this table that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, or anybody who is President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, is the #1 public relations officer of Nigeria. He's the chief foreign affairs policy person for Nigeria. And if President Tinubu, as the chief foreign affairs policy person, is reaching out to the South-South, the global South-South, and going to the Caribbean and South America, I think that the point by Mr. Onanuga about how we have shared historic, cultural, affinity with St. Lucia and other countries in the Caribbean, I think that the points are well made. After all, Sir Danley Alexander, who succeeded Sir Teslim Olawale Elias, as Chief Justice of the Federation, 1975 to 79, came from this same St. Lucia. Now, Sir Danley Alexander's son, Michael, also fought in the Nigerian Civil War. In other words, even at the personal level, there is that connection. So if President Tinubu is saying he's reaching out to the Caribbean and to that part of the world, I think it's in order. I recall that when President Jonathan was in office, he also reached out, to that part of the world. We were in Trinidad and Tobago, we were in another country, and on those occasions, President Jonathan addressed joint session of parliament in those, Caribbean countries where they still have a parliamentary system of government. And President Tinubu is also going to address a joint sitting of the parliament of St. Lucia, which I think is a honorable thing to do. I do not see any objections here. Even if it is at the cultural level, there's something called, cultural diplomacy, reaching out to Africans in diaspora, people who were taken away. In fact, some of the people in St. Lucia, they trace their ancestry to this country, Nigeria. So in the spirit of fraternity, brotherhood, cultural diplomacy, I think that the trip is in order. So what we don't expect is that it's not a trip that is going to take forever now. So Caribbean, South America. So I disagree absolutely with Mr. Peter Obi on this one.
Okay. You see, we can talk about cultural significance and other things between Nigeria and St. Lucia. We can even talk about the history of the Caribbean, talk about Jamaica, where there's a place called, Calabar, stretch it up to Brazil, Bahia, the Yoruba extraction and all of that. But what Peter Obi is saying is apt. I think he has a strong point. Niger State, flood. Oji, let me paint a picture for you this morning. Days after the flooding, decaying bodies were taken off the streets in Niger State, in Mokwa, decaying bodies. The president did not visit the place. In fact, even Benue, we had to shout until the president finally decided, and they made a jamboree out of it. I mean, we're talking about the jamboree now. We talked about what transpired.
Yeah, students.
So what he's saying invariably is that there's a time that the president sits and gets things done. Nigerians like to have this false equivalence between presidents. Sometimes when it's suits them, they will say, oh, there's flood in Nigeria, there's flood in America too. Compare with other presidents. Is this how they are always out every time? When the pertinent issues happen in there, they are not there. So President Tinubu has gone at the expense of taxpayers' money to go to St. Lucia, a country with less than 180,000 people, a country that's not even up to Ajay population. He has gone with taxpayers' money. He's going to address a parliament of a country that is not up to Ajay in population. I mean, what we are just saying, we're not saying don't travel. Yeah. We're not saying you can't go and do cultural ties. What we are saying is...
The VP went to Niger State.
Dr. Abati, what we are saying is...
The VP went there.
Dr. Abati, with due respect, is the VP we voted for.
No, but the VP went there to represent the president.
Can't you see that it's the VP we voted for? But you see, when you say things like that, Dr. Abati, but when it's politics time, the president will go to Niger and campaign. But when it's distress time, he can't go to Niger.
Well, I guess what we're saying is there's a time for everything.
There's a time for everything. And that's what Peter Obi was saying.
So, I always like to say two things can be true at the same time. So I think both things have merit. On the St. Lucia side, so last year, St. Lucia was elected to the presidency of the executive board of UNESCO. And one of the people who led that campaign, that successful campaign, was Gilbert Shaguri, who the president has referred to as his as a development partner, not just into Nigeria. So a part of me feels like, well, is it possible that the trip to St. Lucia has something to do with Nigeria campaigning for a more visible role with UNESCO, deepening, cultural exchanges and so forth, of which we stand to benefit from. There's a lot of visibility, partnerships and so forth that would come from, deepening our ties with organizations such as UNESCO, especially because we know how much our cultural achievements have put us on the map globally. On the other part, I think it's also fair for Peter Obi and Nigerians to say that we'd like to see more of the president in different parts of Nigeria. Yes. I think both things can be true. Yes. Let's see you. Remember when he went to Benue State, there was the issue of the road. He couldn't actually get to Mokwa because the road was bad and so forth. So I think people are saying if you spend more time in different parts of Nigeria, you'd actually get a more realistic sense of the situation on the ground.
Especially with the heightened insecurity, just only recently with the death toll in Benue and Borno and all those northern states. Well, we'll move on now to another story. Suspended Rivers State Governor Sim Fubara has addressed his supporters after a reconciliation meeting with the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, facilitated by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, saying no sacrifice is too big for peace and stability in Rivers State. While speaking in Port Harcourt, the state capital, after the funeral of Wike's uncle, Fubara acknowledged the heavy and bitter nature of the peace deal, which reportedly includes conditions such as not seeking re-election in 2027 and permitting Wike to nominate local government chairpersons. Fubara urged his supporters to accept the agreement, emphasizing that the overall interest of the state and its development necessitates an end to the prolonged political crisis. Let's take a listen before we come back for a discussion.
At this point, if you want to be truthful to yourself, not lying to yourself, the only solution is peace. I didn't say that there is no price that is too big to pay for peace. I meant it, and I am still ready to follow it to the end. Nobody can take away the role my other played. That's the truth. Yeah, we have our differences that led to this event. Nobody here will say he doesn't know the role the man played. Nobody will say he doesn't. Nobody can miss away the risks he took. Yes, at the point we had our differences. And if today there is need for us to settle, please, anyone who genuinely believe in me should understand that it is right thing to do.
All right, it appears there's full reconciliation here. He's even acknowledging the role his godfather played, because that's what he is at this point. And he's saying that there's no price too big to pay for peace. I'd like to take this tweet, which I actually liked. It was a post on X, and this person detailed a number of points, and I just took a little bit of it from characteristics. He wrote, the reconciliation of Fubara and Wike, a lesson in politics, power and forgiveness. It was a political standoff that exposed the fragile dynamics of godfatherism, loyalty, and independence in Nigeria's democracy. Yet, in the end, both men chose a path less traveled. Reconciliation. This act of mending fences is not a sign of weakness, but one of maturity, and it carries deep lessons for the youth, for politicians, and indeed for every citizen. 1. The virtue of forgiveness and reconciliation. In a nation often fueled by bitterness and prolonged enmity, this reconciliation speaks volumes. It underscores that true leadership lies not in perpetual confrontation, but in knowing when to lay down arms for the sake of peace. Forgiveness is not a political tool. It is a virtue we must all derive, practice, and preach. The courage to forgive, even after public humiliation or betrayal, is rare in politics. Yet, both men showed that reconciliation, though costly to pride, is priceless in value. 3. Strategy in defeat, grace in victory. Politics is a game of chess, not boxing. You don't win by sheer force. You win by foresight. The reconciliation revealed that both men understood the moment. Fubara, in retreating, showed the humility of a man not defeated by recalculating. Wike, in embracing, demonstrated the wisdom of consolidating influence through grace, not control. To fight, one must be sure of victory. But wiser still is the one who knows when to yield ground to win the war of legacy, peace, and prosperity. Finally, the moral takeaway. Young Nigerians must take note. Politics is not war, it is service. There will be betrayals, losses, and moments of solitude. But humility, forgiveness, strategic wisdom, and integrity remain the true currencies of enduring leadership. This episode has shown that even the fiercest political battles can end in peace, and that in politics, the man who can forgive is often the one who will outlive the storms. Let this serve as a compass for a more mature democratic culture where differences are settled with wisdom, where victory is won with grace, and where defeat is accepted with humility. Because at the end of the day, power is transient, but character endures. Politics is a game of chess. Play to win, but more importantly, play to build. I think he summarized a lot of points there. Oh, you spoke well. But I really did admire the tweet. And you disagree with the tweet, which is why, it's good for public discourse.
I disagree with the tweet in entirety because the tweet does not even know the background story.
Go ahead.
Until we see the terms and agreements, there are many different types of deal. There's coming into agreements from a place of strength, and there's a mumu deal. The mumu deal is when you are being subjugated, you are being battered and beaten, and you are forced to sign a mumu deal. So we don't know what Fubara signed. Maybe it's mumu deal or introspection and coming into agreement. We don't know. Secondly, they are talking about character and moral. What is character in having a godfather? What's character in that? That the will of a people, one man says, I'm the one that makes a governor, where they are people, where it is the people that vote. You can see the complete disrespect for the electorate, and that's why they don't come out for elections. So what is character in that? What is character when one man says, l'état c'est moi, l'économie c'est moi. I should be the one ruling the resource of the people, and whoever I put there is there. What's the character in that?
So your own is fight to finish.
No, see, let me tell you something. The truth has to be said. Me, I don't have time for igberigbe and mess.
What does that mean?
Igberigbe is rubbish and stupidity. See, let's call it spade a spade. The only reason why Fubara backed down was because the court judgment didn't favor him, which a lot of people have also made arguments as regards the court judgments. IJAP the other day made their reservations as regards court judgments in this country. So let's call it spade a spade. That's the reason why after that judgment. But somebody will have thought that honor demands that if you are right on your points, the worst thing they will have done is allow himself to be impeached, and that's not the end of the world. But they said, oh, they saved him. They now committed another constitutional aberration by bringing in a state of emergency to solve. So, state of emergency. Do you know what state of emergency is? With the temerity of state of emergency. So, state of emergency is now even used to settle political scores in this country. And we are looking. What kind of country are we living in? And somebody is writing theatres and saying moral, values. What moral?
I love the points. Dr. Vati, go ahead.
Okay, in my early life, I used to be a university teacher, and I used to teach a course called Shakespeare and His Contemporaries, English 457, they call it, at Ogun State University, as it then was. Now, one of the scripts we taught was a play called She Stoops to Conquer by Oliver Goldsmith.
One of my favorites.
Now, what's the major moral of that play by Oliver Goldsmith? It is that, look, you can stoop to conquer. And I think that in this particular case, what Sim Fubara has done is a classic definition of stooping to conquer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what the nature of that conquest will turn out to be, we do not know. However, what we know is that we've been arguing on this table that we need peace, stability, growth, progress in Rivers State.
Yeah.
If the conquest here would progress democratic policy, the democratic dispensation, remove the state of emergency in Rivers State, I think it's something that we can say fine. And that's why it seems to me that Sim Fubara says, well, it's difficult, but it is necessary.
Yes.
And I hope that all the people who have been supporting him, the elders who have suddenly disappeared, and the youth council that we no longer see, we would like to hear from them too. Although some of them have said, look, let peace reign.
Yep.
It's important that peace reigns in Rivers State, that democracy survives in Rivers State.
All right.
Now, the other time you brought this subject up, I said it's an illustration of how Nigerian politics is paternalistic. It had to take President Tinubu putting his feet down for there to be this new development in Rivers State. We said that the politics of Rivers State characteristically is prebendal. It's a rentier system whereby you have a godfather who appoints clients, and his clients have to suck up to him. That is why what has happened in Rivers State will seem to appear like a triumph for Nyesom Wike, who is the godfather, and Sim Fubara is his client, and there are probably other clients. 3, the terms of the reconciliation that has now brought together old foes, Amewule, the speaker, Fubara, the suspended governor, and also the godfather, self-styled, Nyesom Wike, that has brought them together. They attended the burial of the uncle of Nyesom Wike at Obioakpo. So even if you look at the optics, you know, Wike has every reason to be triumphant. Yeah. He, as a godfather, has survived the battle. However, should that be the pattern for Nigerian politics? We do not think so. Right. But the intervention of President Tinubu in this matter, how soon would that suspension that those who know this subject have said is illegal and unconstitutional, and then what comes after? Yes. Whatever comes after, we will be here to do the analysis.
As always.
And we will speak our mind.
Yes, as always. Nobody can gag you. All right. Well, you know the FCT... You did. Hold on, doctor. We have to move. We have to speak. All right. Well, you know the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, put on quite a show with his new dance moves at the 60th birthday celebration of PDP National Secretary, Senator Samuel Anyanwu. Let's take a look.
I see the tweet us, he go to bend them. I see the bend them, I see the tweet us, he go to bend them. I see the bend them,
that's the crack of my viewers.
I see the sweet us, he go to bend them. I see the sweet us, he go to bend them.
No, we just love. I mean, he is content
I want to challenge you to a dance.
No, I like it.
Minister Nyesom Wike, I challenge you to a dance. Please, pick your time of choosing, we'll be there.
Well, I loved it. Well, what would we say? It was Senator Samuel Anyanwu's 60th birthday as well. Happy birthday to you. I mean, you go to sweet us.
I see the sweet us, you go to bend them.
Well, all right. Kudos, City Minister Nyesom Wike, Nigeria now cruise.
So guys, you have seen it for yourself. These are the things we are talking about when it comes to leadership in this country. You get to know that we don't have leaders. I mean, we don't have leaders. You can imagine Tinubu is outside the country. These bad guys are like taking over everywhere, and they are citing that they don't have enough weapons to confront them. Honestly, this is the worst thing somebody can ever talk of or somebody can think of. I'm just going to take you through some of the reactions coming from Nigerians, because as it stands now, we don't have any leadership on ground. Tinubu has been wakaing. Tinubu is known as the most traveled president in the world. I mean, every time Tinubu is on transit, the benefit of this movement, Nigerians are not seeing it. I mean, Nigerians are not seeing it because what is he going to show for? He cannot tell us what. He will tell us that investors are coming. You will wait and wait. You will not see any investor. That is where we are as a country. So you can imagine at this time now, we are being told that the Tinubu's government left the country and the Nigerian military or Nigerian security agents are almost surrendering to these bad guys. So guys, I don't know what you make of this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you.